Hello and welcome to another episode of the All Things Considered CX podcast. I'm your host, Bob Azman, and welcome back for another episode. As we've talked on the previous two episodes, I always like to begin the new year with what I would call kind of our adjacent support that we get from ourselves as career professionals, and not so much focused on customer experience, but what are we doing as professionals to develop ourselves, our careers, and our personal lives. And so we've had an expert on, of course, talking about how to build your brand on LinkedIn. We've had an expert talking to us about our personal and professional development and how to take that step in building yourself and preparing yourself if you're choosing to do a career search or looking for your next opportunity at your current company. So the next logical step is to have somebody in the executive search world join us. And so I'm really pleased to have Kip Knipple joining me. He has been very active on LinkedIn and really providing some great perspective. And so I thought he'd be great to join the podcast and talk about where he's seeing the labor environment right now and is dealing with clients and candidates. And so Kip, welcome to the podcast. We're glad to have you. Would you introduce yourself to our listeners?
You bet. Thanks so much, Bob. I really appreciate it. So my name's Kip Knipple. I own an executive headhunting or recruiting firm called Kip Search, based in Minnesota, but do work all around the country.
Yeah, that's great. And Kip, how did you get into this? We always talk about this with our customer experience experts that join us, but how did you get into executive search?
Yeah, I mean, probably the best way, I'll kind of tell you a story. I mean, this is kind of how I share it with people. Because I was a lawyer for a number of years, worked in commercial real estate before starting this. But really, and it might be helpful to listeners, and this is kind of how I tell the story. I mean, have you ever felt restless in your career? Like something was missing, and I definitely have. After law school, I worked in mergers and acquisitions at a law firm, and then later in commercial real estate, as I said. And while I loved making deals and connecting companies to the resources they needed, after several years, I started to feel empty. I remember thinking, this isn't it. I want to make a bigger impact actually on people's lives. And fortunately, one of my mentors introduced me to executive recruiting, otherwise known as headhunting. And she said, instead of connecting companies with physical resources in executive headhunting, you get to connect them with people. And then the work is very personal, very collaborative. So I made the jump. And after my first search, I was absolutely hooked. My client was a big private company looking for a CFO. And given the job requirements, I knew they were looking for kind of a one in the million kind of person, but was up for the challenge. And after a ton of research, I found a gentleman by the name of Matt. He was in his mid-50s, working as a CFO, for a large Fortune 500 company. And when I called him, he said, I'm not interested in making the move. I plan to retire here. In addition to the kind of the hunt for that perfect candidate, his initial hesitation made me realize the other thing that I really love about this work, which is telling stories. I knew that, just kind of listing the facts of, who a company was, what the position offered, wouldn't be enough. I had to, cast a vision as to why this was worth the move. And I had to tell my client company's story. And so as I spoke with Matt, I could hear him starting to warm up. And when the call ended, he said, yes, I'm open to talking with them. And Matt, at the end of the day, Matt ended up making the move. I spoke with him a few months later, and he said, I have not had this much fun in my career in years. And my wife is happier because I'm happier. Thank you so much, Kip. And that moment was huge for me. I felt so fulfilled, being able to make a difference in both Matt's personal and his professional life. But it didn't end there. My client, the company Matt went to work for, their business skyrocketed under his leadership. It was a win for Matt, a win for my client, a win for me personally. And since then, I've never really looked back. Every day I get up excited to, open doors and change lives. And then here at Kip Search, we're laser focused on helping companies and individuals individuals achieve abundance and impact. And that's kind of the story without kind of just giving the facts, kind of telling the story about how it all came to be for me.
Right. So a couple of nuggets there, Kip, I want to explore with you. So first of all, I love the concept that you talk about telling stories, because in the customer experience world, that's what we talk a lot about is let's tell the story of the brand. Let's tell the story of the experience. And it goes so much beyond, whether our customers are satisfied or not. It really talks about how do you tie all that together? So unbeknownst, and our listeners probably realize we don't do a lot of prep work on these, so I didn't know you were going to talk about telling stories and how it relates to customer experience. So I love it. But how do you go about that? So what you're saying is you tell the story of the company that you're trying to get the candidate to get some interest in. And so how do you go about doing that?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Kind of step one in our process is we spend a lot of time with the client on the front end, just really doing a lot of due diligence, asking a lot of questions, just really so we understand, what is their business? How do they do it? What is their culture? What are their core values? And then kind of get their buy-in on, here's what we're hearing. Here's how we want to tell your story. Are we hearing you right? Is this a good representation of your story and your culture and your core values? And, really kind of come to consensus on that. And then, we view ourselves really as an extension of our client's brand. So then as we're out in the marketplace, we're kind of we're shooting or sharing their story and their brand from the rooftops. And that's really how we do our business. We share the story with a certain group of people, and then it's compelling enough they share it with their friends, and it just kind of expounds from there. And we're trying to expand our client's story as a company and specific to the role we're working on as wide as possible, and then come back into ultimately finding the best candidates. But it's we really review what we do is we're not trying to sell anybody on anything. We're just trying to give them enough information to make the decision. Do they want to take a next step and a next step and a next step? And the key to that is just telling an accurate, but a compelling story about who our clients are. Again, we always go back to culture and core values, so people can see do those line up with the kind of culture they want to work in and their personal core values. And that's really how we ensure the best long-term fits for our client companies, but also for candidates too. That this is where they want to be and where they want to spend their career and the kind of people they want to be around. And just by being open and authentic about what is the culture, what are the core values, people are coming in eyes wide open, and it attracts the right people and dissuades the wrong people, so that it's a good fit all around for everybody.
Right. Well, I mean, and I think what we would use in our nomenclature is you're creating the employee experience that creates employee engagement with your potential clients and potential candidates. It's fascinating how the words you're using align to what we do in customer experience. The second nugget I heard from you in your description of your career was you had that kind of empty feeling. And, as a lot of customer experience professionals were adversely impacted by the pandemic, the customer experience was treated more as an expenditure that could be cut rather than a core value of the organization. So many were impacted. And then kind of the natural human tendency when you begin a new year is, am I happy in my career? Am I happy in my profession? All that being said, what are you seeing as we come into 2023 in terms maybe what I'd call the lay of the land, Kip? Because, we're seeing a lot of tech organizations laying off. When we're taping this, 3M just announced, a 3M Minnesota-based company, fine Minnesota-based company, announced layoffs. What are you starting to see in the environment of the labor market from where you sit?
Oh, another fantastic question. The truth is, no matter what the economy is doing, no matter what the labor market's doing, companies will find a way to, good companies, great companies will find a way to thrive. And the same thing with people. Despite, I saw that 3M layoff as well. but despite these types of things, if people really are good at whatever it is, that they do, they have a lot of options. It is still a war for talent where people have lots of options from lots of different companies. The biggest shift from COVID was, kind of remote work and hybrid work. And so there's just geographically so many more options of opportunities to work and work from home, work from remote. The hard part is it's almost the opposite. It's narrowing down and really trying to pinpoint, what do I really want to do? What will truly fill me up and have me fulfilled in my career? And again, I always go back to culture. And what is the kind of culture of an organization that I want to work in? What are my own personal core values? What are the core values of the employers I'm looking at, and how do we line those up? So again, it's a war for talent. The candidates people are still in the driver's seat. And that's from someone to serve coffee at Starbucks all the way up to the CEO of a company. Really good people are in high demand.
It's interesting, Kip, when you're talking about that, because I monitor on LinkedIn, I monitor different job segments, so customer experience, operations, contact centers, the areas that I have some expertise in. And I'll look at, and, so you'll hear about all these layoffs, and then you'll look online and a company will post a job and it'll say, posted 1 hour ago, 350 applicants. And you go, wait a minute. Holy Toledo, there are a lot of people looking for positions out there. And of course, you have a totally different approach on this with executive search, but it seems like sorting through all of that for organizations can really be difficult in trying to find that ideal candidate. Is that your experience?
Yes, that's 100% true. And I, always, inevitably when people hear what we do, individuals reach out that are looking for new opportunities. And I always tell them, really, our business is companies hire us to find people, but we'll always work with individuals on a targeted basis to try to find opportunities. And really what we're trying to do there is, even small companies have software programs that are looking for keywords in people's resumes or whatever they put online before an actual human being ever sees it. So we try to help people cut through that and actually get to a person, so you can tell your story, hear the company's story, and see if there might be a fit. And it doesn't guarantee to open every door, but we're just trying to separate people from the crowd and actually get to a person, which, exponentially increases your opportunity to at least have an interview, pursue things, take a look at them. And then kind of what you touched on there, the other thing that happened with COVID was, people made such drastic changes in their lives. Working totally remote. A lot of people moved to other, locations, but it really, when people seem to make, big changes, they kind of look at every area of their life. And so I think a lot more people, even if they've been in their role for a long time and they're happy, they're much more open to at least hearing about other opportunities or pursuing other things or exploring things. So, I think a lot of people, even though they're not necessarily unhappy in their current role, they'll apply to other roles or other opportunities that pique their interest. And so there's a lot more people, kind of looking at opportunities too.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. What I don't know if you call it advice or professional counseling or coaching would you give to people that are saying to themselves, hey, it's January, it's time for me to make a career move? What are some things that, maybe you first approach a candidate and they may not have a resume, they might not have a network. I was always coached and taught that the time to have a network is not when you need it, but it's when you don't need it. And so I find a lot of times where people are trying to build their networks overnight. So do you have some things that you've observed or seen that you kind of work with your candidates and advise them and help them, or give tips to our listeners about what are some good first things to do if you're going to embark on a search?
Yeah, another excellent question. I think the biggest thing, and it's kind of a mindset shift. So many people want to tell, look at the resume and this is what I've done and this has kind of been my past. But the mindset shift is to switch to the future. What do you want? What types of roles are you interested in? What types of companies, what sizes of companies, industries, what gets you excited to think about? And it doesn't have to be what you've done before. And so to get people to kind of shift their mind from, well, this is what I've done and this is what I've always done, to what do I want? What excites me? And sometimes I tell people just to spend a little bit of time and, by yourself and think, if I could pick the perfect role at the perfect company, or maybe it's 3 totally different ones, what would that be? And then let's go laser focus, try to find those opportunities. And we can always expand it to more things, but why not look for exactly what you think you want? Again, even if it's a couple of totally different things, because a lot of times people are pretty open and flexible for, what they're looking for. But unless you know what you want, you're never going to find it. So I think that's a very useful exercise, just to spend a little bit of time and think about that. What would really excite me in a career? And it might not necessarily be out there, but let's at least go look for it very specifically, very laser focused like.
Mm-hmm. Now you shared the story about Matt, which I thought was great. And what is it I'll ask this both ways, for clients and candidates, that's the tipping point. I mean, let's set money aside for a minute, if money wasn't the object, but what is it that you find that clients say, yes, that's the candidate, and for candidates that say, yes, that's the organization? Is there a tipping point that happens, or kind of a revelation that you see when you're working on both sides of the fence there with clients and with candidates?
Yeah, no, another fantastic question. I'll maybe do the client perspective first. There's a lot of people that have the skills to do a certain role. So really what companies are looking for, and again, when they engage with us, we're going to present a slate of candidates that all have the skills. So that maybe simplifies it a little bit, but it's who fits in with our culture. And I probably sound like a broken record, but who really is a culture fit? Who really is a core values fit, personality wise, with who they're going to work with, who really fits in well and will be, depending on what the role is, someone that will kind of smoothly, slide into that role, or maybe someone that has a little bit of a challenger in them that can challenge the status quo if they want that. But those are really the most important things. And then on the flip side, for candidates, there's countless companies you could work for that do the same thing, but it's really the same. What company has, the kind of culture that I want to work in, and the kind of people that I want to spend, most of my time with, most of my days with, and really has the core values or the purpose, that inspires me or motivates me. Those are the differentiators, the culture, the core values, the people, on both sides of the fence. Because, again, there's a million people that can do the same thing, and there's, tons of companies that, where you can do the same kind of work, but where do I really want to be? Who do I want to spend my time with? And what really kind of motivates me to the core with, again, purpose and core values and culture and things like that.
So it's probably not a case where, people are wanting to make a career change, jump into the deep end of the pool, but rather, kind of gradually go into the water by evaluating what they want to do, what their skill sets are, and what their next step is to be. So rather than, like I said, just jumping in, but maybe take a more structured approach to their career search. Is that a fair statement?
That's very, very true. And also, you have to think, what do I want out of my career and my employer, but also what value am I bringing to the company or the companies I'm looking at? How can I add value to them with my skill set and my background? And how do I articulate that to them so that they see that as a differentiator too? Bob, can do, and these 50 other people can all do the same thing, but Bob also brings these value adds that we really aren't getting from anybody else, and we didn't necessarily know we even wanted. But now that we, have heard Bob explain this to us, that's a real asset, and we'd like to have that. And that, that might be the the tipping point too.
Right. And that's an interesting take on it as well, that it really is kind of a two-way street, right? It's the candidate presenting themselves with their skill sets and their desires, and the client presenting themselves with the position they have, but also the vision and mission, and whether those marry up or not.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you say in your position is the most, I think you talked a little bit about the rewarding part, but what's perhaps the most challenging part that you encounter in this area?
It's working with human beings. People do illogical things. Sometimes there's you just can't make any assumptions about things, and even if you kind of help people see reason and common sense, they don't necessarily always follow that. And we just had a search where candidates aren't totally honest with you about maybe other opportunities they're looking at, or our philosophy is just to be totally open and transparent for the clients and for candidates, so just everybody knows where everybody's at. And if a candidate has a couple other options and those are moving faster, let the client know so that they're informed and they can move quicker or make a better offer or do things, depending on what the situation is. But when people kind of hold back and aren't open and honest with you, that's frustrating. And but it's probably just working with human beings. And that's the blessing, is working with people, but it's also, frustrating sometimes working with people.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of characterizes those of us working in the customer experience realm. We need our customers, obviously, but sometimes we can be frustrated by them. And the key is that how do we overcome the challenges and look for those opportunities, as you've stated. The one other question I have for you is, well, I also skipped one. You also said, if I heard you correctly at the very beginning when you're describing, you said you are an attorney. You went into the legal. So I'm sure that helps in the HR world as well. But I'm just curious as to what skills you might have learned being an attorney that are helping you in executive search.
So many. The biggest one is just problem solving. When a problem is faced, and just kind of reasoning through all the different options and what's the best way to pursue things. But negotiation is huge. Listening, just doing research and just figuring things out. When there's no set plan or way to do something, but you figure it. You're faced with a problem, big or small, and you just figure out how to get the answer and provide that, to the candidate or to the client, or, to bring them together. There's, just countless things. And, negotiating agreements with clients, negotiating salaries and packages and equity and kind of all those kind of things as part of compensation packages. The thing that they don't really teach in law school is sales and marketing and things like that, which are so important in what we do in recruiting. That's not something traditionally you learn in law school at all. A lot of lawyers, that's why they go to law school and practice law. So they don't have to do sales or marketing. They just want to practice this learned profession. And
they used to say that lawyers go to law school or people go to law school because they hate math as well. So
yeah, that's another one. Totally.
Well, that's interesting too, because a number of our listeners are consultants, and I'm a consultant now, having spent 40 years in operations and global customer service and so forth. And I didn't have to do business development. I didn't have to do sales and marketing. I had great partners that did that work with me, and I executed against their plans. And so that's I'm laughing to myself because it's like business development. I went into operations because I didn't want to be in business development. Ben tried it and don't like it, so I'm in operations. But I can definitely relate to your comments about that too. Kip, final words of wisdom. This has been a great podcast. We really appreciate your insights. But before I wrap up, final words of wisdom or thoughts or advice for our listeners who might be embarking on a career search?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the most important first step is to spend a little bit of time and think about, what do I really want? What types of opportunities, roles, companies, again, sizes, industries, geography. Do I want to be remote? Do I want to be in an office? I mean, just kind of create that ideal role, or again, several different ones, and then go pursue those things. And I mean, the best way is, to leverage your own network. I mean, who do you know at these companies that might be interesting to you? Or who do you know that knows somebody there? Or, again, when we try to help candidates, we're almost kind of manufacturing that warm introduction. A lot of times people reach out, to see if I know people or our team knows people at a company. And if not, we can figure out who the right people are. And we try to, again, make that warm introduction. So it's not just all digitally through software programs, but yeah, I mean, it's getting out, talking to people, but you have, it's like, I forget what book it's from, but starting with the end in mind. I mean, what do I want at the end of the day? And then back your way up, and then you can put a plan in place on how to get there. But if you don't know where you're going, it's hard to get there. And when it's just so broad, and I just want a customer experience role somewhere, I mean, it needs to be you might find something, but you might be able to find something 10 times better if you spend a little bit of time and think, what type of organization would I like to do that in? And that's just so helpful. And the other thing is, I don't remember what book this is from. It's Influence is Your Superpower is the name of the book. I highly recommend it. It's absolutely amazing. But one chapter in there talks about just asking for help. Like, most people want to help other people. Like, if someone asked you to help get into a company, or, help you with anything, most people will say yes, because they want to help others. But on the flip side, we're all afraid to ask for help because we don't want to burden somebody or inconvenience them. And so we say no for the other person rather than just asking them. And in the worst cases, they say no, but they probably won't say no. So I would encourage people to ask people in their network, family, friends, me, I mean, anybody, ask for help. And because most people want to help you, and they'll do whatever they can. They might not be able to add value or help you, but they will at least try to help you. So that's a good one. And I'd say read that book. Influence is Your Superpower. Very, very, very good. And it's how to help, kind of create influence, even if I don't know, it's a very, very good book.
That's a great recommendation. And the other one you quoted was from Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And that's just a fantastic, I quote that book all the time. That's why I knew it as soon as you said it.
Yeah, it's been so long.
It's such a great book. My God, it was written years ago, but it's still so appropriate.
So
and
true.
So impactful. And I couldn't agree more with you about the asking for help. And my attitude on that is, someday I'm going to need help too, right? And so I always try to help people out. And if I can, I'm upfront. I'll say, I'll often be asked, hey, you worked at such and such a company. Do you know somebody there? And I'll be like, it's been so long. I just don't know anybody. I can't help you. But you know what? I do know this person who might know somebody, right? So there's always, if I can't, I'm going to, I've never said to anybody, no, I'm not helping you. It's always been, probably not my area of expertise, or probably don't know anybody, but I think this person might. And so try that person. And so if anything, if nothing more, you're gaining a network person as well. So that's pretty cool too. Well, Kip, how would our listeners get in touch with you if they wanted to learn more, either as a client or a candidate?
Yes, I would say, so Kip Knipple, K-I-P as in Paul, and then Knipple is K-N-I-P as in Paul, P as in Paul, E-L. So Kip Knipple. Okay. Every single social media platform I'm on, and it's just my name, Kip Knipple. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, all of them. Or in Kip Search is the name of our firm. You can just Google that, or you can Google my name. And it's got all my contact info is out there. I'm more than happy to help anybody any way I can. And again, our businesses, companies hire us to find people, but the way
Right.
I think of helping people, it's kind of that pay it forward model. Just do enough good in the world, good things come back around, not necessarily specifically from that person, but just in general. So I'm more than happy to talk to anybody or help people any way I can. And again, we're based in Minnesota. Half our team's here, half's down in Texas. We got someone out on the East Coast and do work all around the country. So geography is not an issue. And yeah, I'm more than happy to help any way I can.
Fantastic. Well, Kip, thanks for joining the podcast today. We really appreciate it. And listeners, this has been another episode of the All Things Considered CX podcast. I'm your host, Bob Azman. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your networks. And as always, stay tuned for additional podcasts on interesting subjects as part of the CXFM radio network. Until we meet again, thank you for listening.